This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the best all-in-one platform for all of your website building needs. Hey guys, it's Celestia, and I've been discussing a lot of heavy topics on the channel lately. In fairness, that's for good reason. There's been a lot of heavy stuff to discuss. But I know it wears on both me and all of you to have so many of those videos and so few that are positive or fun. So I decided it was high time for me to fix that with today's. My commissions are currently mostly closed because of an incredibly busy schedule, but before the past year or so, I spent the better part of a decade taking a lot of them. For the most part, that was a really rewarding experience, and I got to work with a lot of really cool people and bring some really awesome ideas to life for them. There were, however, some exceptions to that. And more often than not, I found that those nightmare clients pretty consistently fell into some very specific categories, all of which are such unique brands of infuriating that I'm pretty sure most commission artists will know most of them well from their own experience. So to bring some fun back to the channel, it's time to roast the 10 worst, most comedically ridiculous types of clients that give every artist an aneurysm, while I draw them all for your viewing pleasure. But you can't get clients in the first place without a good portfolio to get their attention. So before we start, let me take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace, the best website building and hosting platform that I've ever used to make one. I've been using Squarespace for my sites long before I started working with them on the channel, and not one but two of my portfolios were built there, both my previous cutesy, super branded one and my current revamped, more professional one. Despite how different they are in almost every way, building both was just as easy, because they offer pre-built layouts for a variety of different commonly used site pages, the ability to duplicate pages and individual elements, and the option to add tons of different types of content, from text and photos to audio, galleries, calendars, forms, and more. And while I always recommend them to artists looking to create their own portfolios based on my personal experience, that's just one example of what you can make there. Squarespace has such a massive, versatile library of designer templates that no matter what kind of site you want to build, they have the perfect option for it. Or many. Even better, any site built on Squarespace can just as easily be turned into an online store, because they give you everything you need to do so. The ability to manage payments and inventory, handle shipping and fulfillment, and even boost your SEO to help you get more eyes on your site and more customers for your store. Which, by the way, can sell more than just physical goods. They make it just as easy to sell services too, like consultations, event management, editing, and even art commissions with all of their tools. A streamlined workflow, built-in appointment scheduling, email marketing tools, and so much more. They make everything just as easy for your customers as it is for you too, because they offer all the most popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH Direct Debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay, and even allow you the option to send individualized branded invoices to specific clients, so you can start accepting orders from all around the world with just a few clicks. So whether you're an artist in need of a portfolio, an entrepreneur building an online store, a creator setting up an interactive blog, or a small business owner making a landing page, Squarespace is the place to do it. And you can find out yourself by going to squarespace.com to get your own free trial today. And once you've built the perfect site that you're ready to launch, you can get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain by going to squarespace.com/DuchessCelestia, linked in the description. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, and please go check them out. Alright, now without further ado, it's time for the roster of very specific nightmare clients that have been plaguing artists for decades, and probably will for decades more, starting with number 1, the micromanager. Look, I'll never hold it against a client if they know exactly what they want and want to make sure what you make matches that vision as closely as possible. For a lot of people, that's literally the entire point of a commission, and I actually like it when I'm given very specific guidance as to what to create and how to create it, so that it's exactly what they want it to be. But there's a difference between providing that clear, detailed guidance in a helpful, productive, and appropriate way, and becoming the artistic equivalent of a helicopter mom who wants to physically attach yourself to my shoulder so you can watch over it 24/7, and inspect every brushstroke made on my canvas to make sure I don't accidentally commit the unforgivable art crime of using cobalt blue instead of sapphire blue on this tiny, almost unnoticeable part of their character's clothing. The micromanager client does not know this difference. This is the person who messages you for updates at least once a day until the commission is complete, and that's on a good day. And every single time you give them an update, they'll have at least 3 or 4 extraordinarily nitpicky revisions to request that are about as reasonable and significant as move that strand of hair 2 pixels to the left, and change the font of the writing on the character's sweater from that abhorrent Arial to the far superior Helvetica. Don't even get me started on the, could you show me the 10 variations of this one minute detail? Because I'll know which one looks right when I see it. And they won't just request the revisions and trust that they'll be included in the next progress picture you send. That would be far too rational and reasonable for them. They will message you asking if you've completed the revisions within hours of requesting them, and they'll want to see right now if you have. By the time this client's commission is complete, whatever device you made it on will have its entire storage space filled with near identical progress photos of it, and you'll be willing to pay them just to take it and please leave forever. This is the kind of client that makes artists create new commission rules just to avoid them. I would know, because it only took 2 or 3 of these before I ended up putting it in my terms of service that I would accommodate only a certain number of revisions before I started charging for them, and I would provide updates after specific amounts of progress and not on request. In fairness, those were rules that should have been there to begin with, but I was baby and I learned the lesson fast. Still though, if artists have to implement new rules just to mitigate your micromanagement, because you're the artistic equivalent of that person who goes into Starbucks, orders a double blended venti caramel frappuccino with non-fat milk, light whip, extra caramel drizzle, 5 pumps of vanilla syrup, 5 pumps of white mocha syrup, 6 pumps of caramel syrup, and a double shot of espresso in a caramel-lined cup, and proceeds to watch the barista make it and correct every single thing they're obviously doing wrong while making it because you know better. You might want to consider that you're the problem. Number 2 and 3 on the list, though, are proof that both ends of every extreme can be equally infuriating. The client that gives you absolutely no direction at all. Known for their iconic, "I'll leave it up to you, you're the artist," and "whatever you think looks good." This client is both 2 and 3 because they fall into 2 subtypes. The one that actually means that and genuinely has no preferences, and the one that most definitely has a lot of preferences. They just either don't know how to communicate them, or they don't actually know what they are yet and are operating on the "I'll know it when I see it" system. The first one isn't on the list because they're actually doing anything wrong. It can actually be a lot of fun to work with someone who only has a vague concept that they want you to interpret and create based solely on your own judgment and stylistic choices. And they're obviously not in the wrong for saying that they have no preferences and want to defer to yours if that's actually true. They're solely on the list because every time I get a client like this, I have 2 equally intense reactions simultaneously. This is gonna be so much fun, and oh my god, no. Do you have any idea how much pressure that is? You're trusting my judgment? I don't even trust my judgment. I got customers like that when I worked at Starbucks too, that would just say like, "surprise me," and internally I was just like, oh my god, please, no, I have no idea what you like. Do you realize how stacked the odds are against me being able to give you a drink that you don't hate? Usually I'd be able to pry some details out of them as to the kind of drinks and flavors they preferred, and use that to make them something they at least outwardly enjoyed. And that's usually the case with these types of art clients too, who generally provide similarly vague but sufficient supplementary guidance. But the pressure is still immense until you get used to working with them. The other kind, however, is on this list because they suck. Albeit not always because they're intentionally being an asshole. In some cases, they don't realize that they do have preferences or a vision for the piece that they want until they give you creative freedom and you deliver something that conflicts with that vision. And they realize what they do want by seeing what they don't want. But regardless of why, it's extraordinarily frustrating to be told, yeah, here's a vague concept, do whatever you want with it. And then you do whatever you want with it, and then be told, no, not like that, do what I want with it, but didn't tell you until just now. Like, you can't give me literally no information about what you want and then request a million revisions because the sketch I gave you based on nothing didn't look how you envisioned it, after you specifically told me that you didn't have a particular vision for it at all. This is the kind of client who will say, yeah, just draw this character in this setting, the rest is up to you, and then respond to the sketch with, oh, that's not the specific pose, expression, angle, and composition that I wanted. Can you change everything so that it is? Okay, so the rest wasn't up to me then. And even this is the best case scenario, where the client actually does have a vision for the piece and they're just figuring it out by having you throw creative spaghetti at a wall until something sticks through a million revisions, rather than establishing it in the first place. At least they articulate the changes they want made. Half the time, they're significantly more vague than that. This character in this setting is a gift compared to just, like, make them look cool. Similarly, change the pose, expression, angle, and composition is also a gift compared to, that's not really what I had in mind. Can you try something different? Without absolutely any clarification as to what different means. I am begging you, please, if you commission an artist and you have an idea in your head of how you want the piece to look, at least make an effort to try to articulate that to the best of your ability and tell them, rather than forcing them to figure it out through 15 rounds of ridiculously vague revisions. But let's move on to the fourth nightmare client. The one who's really excited to offer you the lucrative opportunity to work for them in exchange for exposure. We all know this one, and I think just hearing the word exposure is enough for most artists to feel their souls physically leave their bodies and depart to the afterlife. Like, yes, wonderful, thank you so much. It's the currency that buys exactly nothing. Obviously, it's long since been established that working for exposure is almost never a good idea, but there are some instances in which it isn't the worst idea. Like, for example, if you're working on a big project that is likely to get a lot of attention and has the potential to reach a big audience, and your art will be clearly credited and promoted upon its release. In that case, exposure actually does have some value for you there, and depending on the amount of work involved on your part, it might be worth doing it for free. In most cases though, projects that actually offer a valuable amount of potential exposure for the artists working on them have enough funding to pay those artists and therefore should, but there are quite a few exceptions where there's small indie projects that don't actually have any funding but do have public interest, and those may be worth working on for exposure alone, especially if you're actually passionate about the project. This particular nightmare client, however, is not asking you to work on one of those projects. In fact, they're not asking you to work on something that will be seen by literally anyone but them. I can't really afford your rates right now, but it would be great exposure for you, they say, requesting a random commission of their OC that that will, at best, be posted on their social media where they have 6 followers, one of which is their mom. But don't worry though, they'll credit you and get your name out there. Which begs the question, to who exactly? They post it, they recommend you to others, and by the grace of God, one of those others is interested in hiring you. Except you've been recommended by someone you did free work for, who probably told them that you did it for free, and who now probably thinks they can get you to do theirs for free too. Amazing news! The exposure you worked for just got you new clients who are exclusively willing to pay you in more exposure. This particular client is essentially just trying to convince you to let them pay you with vibes, because that's really all the quote-unquote exposure they can offer you amounts to. And like, I would love it if I could call my landlord and say, just so you know, I made art for like @pizzaroll1234 on Twitter, who has sent me extraordinarily good vibes in return, so that's how I'll be paying my rent this month. Thanks. But unfortunately, I would be homeless. The 5th hilariously awful client is one that I'm a little hesitant to include, just because I know some of my family members watch my channel, but it's, well, exactly that. The close friend or family member. Now, in fairness, this isn't always a nightmare client. My grandparents commissioned a painting from me and were absolutely perfect clients, as was an old friend who commissioned an illustration of her wedding photo. Not every family member or friend is this client, but I have had many that have been, and it's the bane of my existence. Your pre-existing personal relationship with this client is basically viewed by them as an open door to treat art commissions from you like unpaid personal favors that they're owed. Because, you know, they'd help you out if you asked. At the very best, they expect you to give them a massive discount because they're them. You've known them forever. You love them. Come on. But it's a lot more likely that they'll just sincerely expect you not to charge them at all. And the moment you bring up rates, you're gonna get hit with the, oh, I thought you could just help me out with this, like that time that I helped you out. That's what friends and family are for. Or, come on, you'd charge me? Yes, twice removed step Aunt Stacy, because it's my job. And the fact that I'm an artist doesn't entitle you to free art just because we share a last name and drink wine together at Christmas. And more often than not, they follow it up with, oh, it's super simple, don't worry, it won't take you long at all, before describing a piece that rivals the Sistine Chapel's ceiling in complexity. And you can bet your ass that if you actually do cave and make it for them, not only will they consider that an open door to request a million revisions, because they're not a client, they're your buddy, who needs to worry about things like following your terms and conditions for commissions. They will also most definitely be back to ask you for more quote-unquote favors in the form of free art again. And the worst part is that they aren't just a regular client. They're a person that you actually care about and have a relationship with that you don't want to damage. So it's not like you can really just tell them to fuck off. I mean, you could, I guess, and you would save yourself a nightmare client, but you would also probably either lose a friend or become very unpopular at family gatherings. Alright, the next worst client is definitely more niche, and probably one that less of you watching this are likely to have encountered, but I'm including them anyway because I've worked with at least 3 of them that I can recall offhand, and it's like that quote, if I had a penny every time I worked with this client, I'd have 3 pennies, but it's still really weird that it happened 3 times. And by really weird, I mean completely unacceptable and very worthy of roasting. Things start out fine with them. The commission goes smoothly, there are no red flags, you get the work done without issue, and they're happy with it when it's finished. Great, perfect. And just when you've finished thinking the words, that went well, they pop back up in your inbox with one final gem of a message. It's cool if I use this for merch, right? I'm fucking sorry? Have you heard about this crazy new concept called commercial rights? Those things that people charge literal hundreds of dollars for on top of the commission cost itself, because that's the industry standard for commissioning art that you intend to make money from? The things the cost of your commission very specifically didn't include? In no world is it acceptable to just say, oh, by the way, you're fine with it if I sell the art you just made me, right? As some kind of flippant afterthought post-commission. I realize that just like some artists are new at taking commissions, some clients are new at ordering them, and might not have the experience or knowledge necessary to understand the significance of this particular issue. But even then, like, if you're planning on using an artist's work on something you're selling, you have the responsibility and obligation to do your research into commercial rights if you don't already know about them, long before you actually commission that artist. It's also in a lot of their terms and conditions, which they have to read before ordering it, or they're supposed to have to read, but no one ever reads them anyway. And even then, that ignorance is the best possible explanation. A lot of these clients are deliberately trying to take advantage of what they hope is the artist's ignorance of the actual value of commercial rights to their work, so they can get them for free, which is significantly scummier. But even if it is just out of complete ignorance in a situation in which money is being exchanged and intellectual rights are potentially being infringed upon, is still not okay. Art costs more if it's going to be used to make you money, and I feel like that's not a difficult concept to grasp, but it's still one this client is incapable of understanding, and they basically become the embodiment of the surprised Pikachu face when you try to explain. Some of them, and these are the ones that I think are probably acting solely out of innocent ignorance, will just be like, okay, no problem, I didn't realize that, and it becomes what is hopefully a learning experience for them and a non-issue for you. Others, however, do one of 2 things instead. They double down and try to convince you that it's really not a big deal, they won't sell a ton of it, it's just a super small store anyway, and they'll give you credit and exposure in the process, at which point they and the exposure client from before might as well just get married and make exploiting artists into a fun little date. Option 2 is when you realize that what happened isn't actually that they're asking for permission at all, but forgiveness, because they've already started selling it and only now realized it might be a good idea to ask you if that's okay. Technically at that point, you do have the right to pursue legal action, and you most definitely can and should at least get their listings taken down for infringement if they can't be convinced to take them down themselves. But regardless, this particular outcome pushes my self-control to its limit and makes me wonder if, you know what, maybe this time I can resort to violence as a treat. I haven't yet, but I think I might have had I encountered the worst, final, evolved supervillain form of this client that I've only heard of from others. The one that doesn't ask at all. They just complete the commission, use the art on merch, and never say a word about it to you, leaving you to eventually encounter your own art in the wild adorning a super cute t-shirt that you never authorized the production of, that's mocking you with a price tag of like almost half what you were actually paid to make it, that's now going into their pocket. Don't be this client. But before I have an aneurysm from discussing them alone, let's move on to number 7, which is 2 versions of the same coin that end up basically being the exact same brand of annoying. The client who comes right out the gate with an impossible deadline for completion, and the client who assures you that there's no rush at all, when there is most definitely a rush. The first one, at the very least, makes their ridiculous expectations for the speed at which they expect you to work known immediately, rendering them significantly more harmless than their counterpart. They hop into your DMs, explain the fully rendered, complex piece with a background that they want you to make, and then explain that it's super urgent and they need it done ASAP, ideally within the next couple days, maybe tomorrow. Yes, you're gonna want to implode because that's physically impossible unless you decide to forego sleep, food, and literally any other obligations in your life, be they social or work, which they most definitely will not compensate you for. But because they're so upfront about it, it's very easy to just politely inform them that you're not able to work with that timeline and internally laugh them out of the door of your inbox. Some will put up a fight and try to convince you that it's super important and they really, really need it done, but you still haven't agreed to work with them yet, so you still have and should take the option to say, clearly not important enough for you to plan ahead for it to follow a reasonable timeline, and call it a day. That's what makes their counterpart so much worse. They lure you in with a false sense of security. You read the words, "There's no rush, take your time," and for a brief, beautiful moment, you think you're interacting with a reasonable human being, so you accept the commission, which you will regret within less than 24 hours, because that's the longest it'll take them to send you the first message of, "So how's it going?" Something that will be followed up by so many, "Any updates?" and "Do you think it'll be done soon?" and "Have you made any more progress?" that you realize no rush was as big of a lie as any YouTuber telling you that you should definitely buy their new cryptocurrency and you'll be bathing in a Scrooge McDuck bathtub of cash in no time. And now you're stuck with them until it's done, because you bought it and you accepted the commission. Now, number 8. To explain number 8, let me tell you a fun little story about my recent trip to the grocery store. I'm at the till, minding my business, waiting for the guy in front of me to be done so I can check out, and the cashier has finally finished scanning his 800 items before she makes the ultimate mistake of scanning this one single banana. This banana immediately becomes the biggest problem facing human society in the eyes of the man buying it, because it cost 10 entire cents more than it did the last time he bought a banana there. Now, I would get it if this was a poverty thing, because I've been in that position where 10 cents genuinely is the deciding factor for whether or not you're able to afford the thing. But as I said, the number of items of his the cashier had already scanned was massive, and they were not all necessities. It was everything from cases of soda and 3 different types of specialty cheeses to a Pokemon card box set that I know cost $35 because I wanted it and couldn't get it, and this neon sign Bluetooth alarm clock that actually looked really cool. Point being that it didn't seem like the issue was that he couldn't afford the 10-cent difference. It was just that he didn't want to pay it as a matter of principle. Once what felt like 5 minutes of trying to convince the cashier that the price was wrong had failed, he resorted to saying, "Look, it has these brown spots. It's not a prime banana. Can't you just take the 10 cents off as a discount for that?" And at this point, I feel like an independent corner store would probably have just agreed to that to get this man out as quickly as possible, but it was a Shoppers Drug Mart, and that's a massive corporate chain where employees are very strictly not allowed to bend the rules, which the cashier told the guy, who eventually finally acquiesced and paid the 10 extra cents, but not before going back to the fruit section to exchange his banana for one without brown spots. The brown spots that weren't a problem to him before the 10 cents debacle, but suddenly became a huge one when it was a convenient argument to make, and then his final hill to die on. My point in telling this story is that this man, he is the 8th worst art client, and he is so common. The client that asks for your rates, hears your rates, and then decides that they're actually just a loose guideline that's open to negotiation. Could you do it for half that? No, actually, my prices aren't negotiable. Well, okay, what actually is a half-body portrait? Like, where do you draw the line? What if you drew slightly less of the character than you normally do for a half-body? Like, just below the boobs. Could you charge less then? What if you draw one of her hands behind her back? That would would save you time, so that should be knocked off the price, right? And so on, until they are literally arguing, can the number of brown spots on my art banana correspond with the dollars removed from its price? My favorite is when they say, okay, what if you remove the background? Because that is one thing I actually do accommodate, since I charge for backgrounds separately from the characters, at least in most cases. It's my favorite, very sarcastically, because the moment the commission is done, they then sneak back in with a, could you just add like this super simple thing in the background? It won't take you long, I promise. No, I cannot, Banana Man, because once the simple thing is done, you'll want 10 more, and then it'll just be a free background. What's even funnier is that at least 50% of the time, if you keep pushing back and refuse to budge on your prices at all, they don't say, okay, no worries, thanks for your time, and back out of the commission. They just pay your actual rates. Because they could afford them the whole time, they just wanted to not do that if that was an option. The ninth worst client is also a price negotiator, but in a uniquely manipulative way. They use guilt tripping. This client always has a tragic backstory like a Mary Sue in a badly written fanfic. They don't just want a discount, they need it, because it's for their dying great uncle whose last wish was to receive this piece of art of their OC, or they were just kicked out of their home and lost their job and robbed at gunpoint and in a really bad situation right now, but are miraculously able to prioritize getting a reduced price for their commission rather than food. And once they're done sharing that tragic backstory with you, they all end with basically the same kicker. So I'm so sorry, but could you do it for a little less? I hate to ask, things are just really hard right now and it would mean a lot. Bonus points if they add just whatever you think is fair, basically setting you up to decide how much their pain is worth to you monetarily. I think the reason this client really bugs me is because I don't know how much of what they're saying is true. In a lot of cases, this is literally just a setup for a scam, and it's a complete lie. But other times, it's something like, my little sister is really sick right now, and it would mean the world to me if you could draw her favorite character or her OC, but I don't have enough money to pay your usual rate. And like, honestly, if that's true, yeah, I will charge them less, and I will draw whatever's gonna make their little sister smile for whatever the client can afford to pay. But the number of clients that just lie about it make me so suspicious that I struggle to trust the ones that are being honest. And that's honestly the worst part. They ruin it for everyone else. Finally, we're at number 10. Probably not the worst client on the list, but definitely up there. The ghoster. They, like the client who thinks commercial rights are a work of fiction, start out wonderful. They're nice, reasonable, no red flags are raised, so you accept the commission. You start work on it, and within a couple hours or days or whatever your pace is, the sketch is done, and you send it to them for approval. Which you can't actually continue to work on the piece without, because what if they want revisions? If you start on the line art without getting approval, you might have to start over. And trust me, with this client, you won't get it. Delays are normal, life is busy, okay. But on week 3 of hearing nothing from them and being able to do absolutely no work on their commission as a result, one begins to start losing patience. Once it's been 3 months, one begins to wonder if they've been kidnapped and are now living out the plot of Taken, because that's pretty much the only acceptable excuse for leaving you unread for that long with absolutely no response whatsoever. This is particularly bothersome if you do what I do and take half payment up front, because you owe this client work for what they've already paid, and you can't create that work without their input. So it's constantly in the back of your head as this item on your to-do list that you can never ever check off. Finally, after a million fucking years, they answer, and neither of the 2 answers they can give are any less infuriating than the other. Looks great, sketch approved, is a relief because you can continue, and also the world's biggest slap in the face because you could have been continuing this whole entire time, and instead you had to wait until they found the convenient moment to glance at it and send you 4 words, and you know it's gonna be the same with the next stage. Conversely, looks good but could you make these revisions means you can take solace in the fact that maybe part of the reason they took so long was because they were considering what revisions they wanted. But you also now know that you're probably gonna have to wait another eon for them to approve those revisions before moving on to the next stage, which will probably prompt more. And now you're looking at a timeline of several years just to finish something that would have taken a month at most if they could just communicate like a normal human being. But those are just my top 10 worst clients. I am sincerely so excited to hear about yours, so please leave them in the comments, because I know I've barely scratched the surface. It's very therapeutic to be able to bitch about the clients that are so bad that TikToks are made about them on a regular basis, like laughing in solidarity with everyone else who has to deal with them. So please feel free to join me. And also let me know if you enjoyed the video, because I think this could be a fun way to break up heavier topics with a good laugh. Kind of like art trope top 10s, but top 10 things every artist understands, 10 weird things only artists do, 10 types of artists, 10 OCs every artist had, and so on. Let me know. Thank you for watching, and special thank you as always to channel members Joseph Solomon, TC Pratt, Haruki Saluzzo, Extinction Animation, Andy the Hedgehog, Kai the Memer, Jazz, Just Sayori, Hailstorm, Darkholder, Another Foxboy, Pale Star, and Cyber Tori, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Ken Yin, Crazy Asar, Gentong, MG, Blah Mage, TC Pratt, Celine Moongazer, Eldritchia, The Stray Dog, Decagon, Jenny Chan, Catbus, Lucy Yamajiki, Selena Beebe, Pride Day, Peel, Wingtang Wong, Marie Greer, Potato, Jazz, Voidwalker, Latte Tabby, Christian Cook, Adam Suroviets, Doriaki, Varius, Hailstorm, Emo Queen Jules, Show, That's It, Craig, Scarlet Flame 234, The Names Are Gone, Luwuka Owo, Heart of Amethyst Fable and Maho Stars, and I'll see you in the next one.